Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Audit Standards and Risk Committee meeting for September. We will start off with the apologies for absence, Eddie.
Thank you, Chair. We haven't received any apologies for tonight.
Item number 2, minutes of the previous meeting. Do any of the committee members have any comments on those, or are you happy for me to sign them? Declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest for any of the items on the agenda this evening? I'll take that as a no, so we rattle through. Item number 4, public question time. I don't think we've had any, have we? No public questions received. So on to the meat of the agenda. Item number 5 is the corporate risk register.
Thank you, Chair. So this committee is asked to comment and note on the corporate risk register every 6 months. Hopefully you all have in front of you a tracked changes version of the register. So this is all the changes on the register that have happened since the last time this committee saw it back in March this year. So to highlight the main changes, risk 1, information management. We are in the data discovery phase of the LGR. That means that there's going to be a lot of data being shared between local authorities. Therefore, we felt that this needed to be added as a risk to this particular risk. We have put in place mitigations that we believe are keeping that risk low. Risk 2, loss of adequate funding for services. The fair funding government consultation has been included to the risk, even though council finances are looking better than expected due to the unknown outcome of the funding review. It was decided that the risk remains the same. Skipping up to onto risk 5, major incident. We have previously not had enough borough emergency coordinators or information liaison officers, but we have now identified 20 key staff across the council, and we are in the process of training them up to BEC coordinator level. However, these staff haven't yet been trained, so again we just felt that the risk remained the same. Next change, risk 8, regeneration of property projects. The agent has been appointed for the marketing of the London Road block site, and the contract placed and in progress for the asbestos removal and demolition of the ex-Alders building and London Road site. And again, it was felt that because we are in the early stages, the risk remains the same. Cyber security, this risk has increased to a higher level. This is because even though we are doing a lot when it comes to cyber security, if the recent spate of high-profile cyber attacks has taught us anything, it's that you can think that you're doing as much as you can and you might have reduced that impact, but actually, if you have a cyber attack, the financial and reputational damage can be catastrophic. So we just felt that the impact needed to be raised to the highest level. Risk 10, the transformation programme. This has been updated to recognise that some projects within the programme are under pressure to achieve the anticipated cost savings, and that sales of assets may generate capital towards the cost of the transformation programme. Therefore, again, we just believe that this risk remains the same. And recruitment and retention risk 11 it's been updated to include the fact that the turnover of staff has not been as high as anticipated, but the impact of LGR is making retention and recruitment a struggle, and therefore again that risk remains at a high level. That is the key changes, but more than happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Sally, for the committee. Cliff. Councillor Betton, sorry, had his hand up first.
It's okay, I answered Cliff. Just on number 8, I noted that we had the grant funding a year ago, autumn 2024. Has there actually been anything done with that, or is it immediately planned? There was talk about sort of getting rid of the building to make it more attractive to potential buyers.
Martin.
Would you like me to take that one?
Someone?
Would you like me to take that one, Chair?
No, yes, please, sorry.
Yes, so the contract has been placed for those works, and they are in progress and on programme and scheduled to be completed in the spring.
Any idea when they're actually going to start?
They have started. They're in progress. They're on site stripping out, taking out asbestos at the moment. So the asbestos removal is going on inside the Alders building, and all that has to be done in a safe and enclosed fashion before they can start any demolitions. So you probably can't see very much going on, but there is an awful lot happening. We're into the, I think, the second or third month of the contract now.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you both. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you for the report and the changes. I just want to talk about LGR because it runs through quite a lot of the risks. I mean, I guess it just seems to make everything worse. Basically, all the risks more severe, well, a number of risks more severe. I just wonder if you've taken account of a possibility that it might not happen, and just because all the ministers have all just changed and we haven't had the final detail yet, is there a possibility that it might not happen, and that would change the whole risk register completely?
Everything we're being told at the moment is carry on. There's been no indication so far that there will be any change to that, and certainly conversations we've had, just because the ministers have changed doesn't mean that they're over review, so we're just carrying on at the moment.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think a sort of reassessment of the benefits has been done, and there might not be any benefits financially to it. Can I look at risk number 2, which is about loss of adequate funding for services? And I think the sort of likelihood of that is only 2, because we might get to when the council's abolished in LGR, local government reorganisation, and we might not have run out of money by then. But if LGR doesn't happen, then that wouldn't just be a probability, that would be a certainty that the council would run out of money in a couple of years. Is that right?
Yeah, there's kind of two separate things to this. So the risk 2 is around funding from government, essentially, and that's where the fair funding comes in. And we're waiting. The consultation closed a few weeks ago, so we wait for the government. Unfortunately, the sort of budget is going to be later than what we had hoped. So therefore, the local government settlement is going to be probably a month later than what we had hoped originally. So we won't necessarily know all the detail, but hopefully we'll get some noises from the government around some of that, because obviously it's very, very complex. But yes, obviously we are working through an updated MTFS following the transformation programme, and that will be reported to councillors in due course. So that kind of side of stuff, if LGR doesn't happen, then obviously it's potentially a different situation. But you know, even still, the same applies moving into a new unitary. We need to consider, you know, a financial position moving into that as well. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's still public money regardless of what body it's in. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. I'm going to jump in with one of my own, if that's okay, and then go back to the rest of the committee. I just had a question on risk number 7, exposure to property risk, which hasn't been changed since the last time this report came. But one of the justifications for previously downgrading that risk was improvement in letting percentage. But then when we look at one of the reports that's coming later in the meeting, it looks like there's been an increase in vacancies from 12 to 19% in the last quarter. So is that right that we should be keeping that at a 6 rating on the basis of an improvement in letting percentage when one of the other reports seems to contradict that?
Shall I take that one, Chair?
Yes, please, Martin, if you can.
Yeah. Yeah, the letting percentage has been stable on the office and industrial portfolio. It has increased, you're right, on the retail portfolio in the square. There are a number of deals that are in solicitors' hands, so that will bring it back. And there is a little bit of seasonality to that, but I don't think overall there's enough change in the letting position, if you like, to cause that risk to change.
Okay, thank you. I know what it's like when property deals are in solicitors' hands. So, Councillor Quinn, you had your hand up next.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions. Firstly, looking at risk number 9, cyber security. In the action plan, there's a plan to undertake email security phishing for councillors, but that's not been updated. I'd be really interested in that. I've received some quite sophisticated phishing emails to my councillor email address, which I've reported, but there does seem to be a growing concern. So if that training session could be arranged soon, that would be really, really welcome. And then on risk number 11, about retention and recruitment, it says there's been some lunch and learn sessions with staff on the subject of LGR, and these surveys have been completed and the results and learnings are being reviewed. Can we get any top lines from that tonight, if there is any information, or will that be brought to the Audit and Standards Committee in the future? Thank you.
Who wants that one?
Hello, Chair. I can take that if it's useful.
Yes, please.
So firstly, I can report on the phishing training events. We've recently rerun those with staff to establish their effectiveness. They are very effective, and I will certainly take the action back to request that that also happens for councillors. So thank you, Councillor Quinn, for that, for pointing that out. In relation to the LGR Lunch and Learns, we have run 3 lunch and learns to date. One has been on change resilience generally, another has been on 2P, which is the likely legal mechanism for the transfer of staff from one organisation to another, and the last one so far has been on the organisational change policy, which was just a week or so ago. We have another one coming up on the legalities, the structural changes order that I'm sure Ms Spurting can give you more information on if it be useful to you. Further lunch and learns are also planned to look at career development and in particular offer further training on things like interview skills and that sort of thing. So that's probably the top level highlights, but if you'd like any further detail, very happy to provide it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That all makes sense. Yeah, I'm just wondering if staff are generally concerned about LGR and whether we have any kind of statistics about the number who are saying they're concerned about it. Thank you.
Yes, again, very happy to pick that up. It is something that we regularly check in with. In fact, we had meetings with our staff representatives and our mental health first aiders today. And a question we always ask is, how are staff feeling? At the moment, we don't believe that there's any particular cause for concern. People, the intelligence coming back, that people are waiting to hear the message about who our partners are and to have that confirmation of timescales. But there's no particular concern. We've been very pleased to note in our people strategy data collection that we're just in the middle of that things like sickness is reduced from last year, turnover is lower than we anticipated last year. So all the signs at the moment are good. However, we do expect that message to land in the middle of October about our partners. And obviously, it's something we'll keep a very close eye on. We've got a very active programme of internal communications, including all staff briefings, and we are preparing messages so that we can be in contact with staff as soon as we know more about who our partners are and confirm up that timetable, which of course will be their major concern. We are bringing the people strategy to the employment committee, I believe in November, and we will be featuring a lot of sort of LGR ready activity at that point.
Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Happy? Yeah. Councillor Betton.
Thank you. Just on that last point about the cybersecurity, I get training by my company and they send us deliberate phishing emails. And if you report it as phishing, you get a message back, congratulations, well done. If you don't do that, you get one back saying you've been enrolled in more training. So it's an never-ending, ongoing fight, I think, as they get more sophisticated. And anything you do is doing the best you can. Just keep it up, really. But back to my question. You mentioned LGR with Councillor Wilson. Have we... I have seen some comments about Woking being written off, but I've not seen anything written down. Has anybody actually put pen to paper on that yet? And do we know roughly? Because we're going to end up with Woking whichever way it goes.
We don't know yet. All we know is that the government are working with Woking, and there will be some measures. But yeah, there's been obviously various press reports, but any particular write-off, what they've been talking about is the stranded debt and then the normal debts. They've broken theirs down into their property, so they're kind of more focusing on the stranded debt. But yeah, a variety of measures potentially on that, so we don't know anything for certain as yet, unfortunately.
Thank you. Any more from the committee on the corporate risk register? No? Okay, we'll move on then to the next item, which is the capital and investment report. Julie, are you leading on this one, or Vicky? Vicky's leading this one.
Yeah, thank you. So this is the first monitoring report for 2025-26 on capital and investment, which includes property and treasury management. So the format of this report is the same as the capital investment strategy and the outturn reports to hopefully ensure consistency of reporting for councillors. And as I've said before, we'll continually tweak the report, so anyone that's got any feedback of anything you'd particularly like to see that isn't working for you, then obviously we welcome any feedback. So I'll just start with or highlight the key items in this report. Obviously there's quite a lot in there. So with the capital programme, we've spent just shy of 1 million in the year to date. We have 3 million committed, which is against a full year budget of 16.5 million. But we are forecasting to spend more in the latter part of the year, which is quite common in the capital programme. Particularly as Mr. Breeden said earlier, we are on track on some of those bigger schemes, so the spend will start. We have highlighted a scheme saving of 330,000, which we're recommending to be released, and 538,000 to be transferred into future years. And both of these will be a recommendation for executive. Turning to treasury management, we've got current borrowing of about 179 million. It's a slight decline from the end of the financial year, and that is purely down to cash flow. Our budget for borrowing interest is 6.9 million, and we're broadly projecting the same for the outturn. The average borrowing interest rate was well below base rate, and that's due to the longer term borrowing rates being favourable. So that's managed to offset some of the higher short-term rates that we have at the moment. Turning to investments, we've held slightly more investments than we did at the 31st of March, and again that's due to cash flow. I think I've said a number of times we have more cash at the beginning of the year because obviously the council tax coming in. The budget for investment income was just shy of 400,000, and we anticipate currently that we're going to achieve around 700,000 with a return of 4.25%. Our CCLA property fund is still performing well. We've got a small gain in capital value, and we are getting consistent dividends, so that's a good achievement on that one. The report also highlights prudential and treasury indicators. So ordinarily, we haven't really reported these during the year in the past, so we want to kind of, build that out for you. We've got a lower than projected overall capital financing requirement, and this is due to the lower opening position than we had budgeted because there was an adjustment that we did for a prior year when we closed the accounts. And that's positive because that just means we've got less underlying need to borrow. One of the new additions is some benchmarking information in section 7.3, and that compares our investment performance to other clients of Arling Close, and actually that shows that we've been performing really well as at 31st of March and as at 31st of June. They do it every quarter. Section 7.4 shows a little bit of information on the property portfolio, and we're going to develop that for future reports, but this particular one just shows vacancy levels. A key function of capital and investments for the authorities, we've just been talking about the risk register, is risk, and that's explored in section 16 of the report. And the detailed capital programme is included in the annex for you to review. I'll open up to questions.
Thank you, Vicky. Any questions from the committee on this paper? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, and thank you for the extra tutoring as well. It was much needed by me. Just a quick question on page 35, section 2.1, about the economic environment. Inflation, inflation is 3.8% and the budget assumption was 2.5%. So that'll affect things like contracts that have got an indexed component to them. And the funding floor for government funding was 0%, so it was flat cash. So the higher inflation is, the greater pressure on spending is going to be. How is that going to all feed through over the year, and what effect it's going to have on staff wage pressure? Because I think the staff pay rise was 1%.
Yeah, it was 1% last year, and we're just starting those pay negotiations where this type of data will be factored in. Potentially, yes. The core CPI being higher than our general assumed will impact where some of our contracts had sort of agreed inflation and agreed percentages. Obviously, we built some of that in, but so potentially we're going to see some cost pressure on those. Quite often contracts have a set date in them, so it could be September, the September inflation, so it depends on what that is. And obviously we need to factor in the year-on-year impact of inflation. So while they're saying it's sort of higher, when you take the year-on-year impact out, it appears to come down, but obviously your base level is higher. So yeah, at the moment we don't really know the impact of that, but obviously where we're negotiating new contracts, that could come in. But we were obviously seeing elevated levels in terms of the construction industry from, right back from a few years ago. So that's kind of a little bit of wait and see, depending on a kind of case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Anyone else? I do have a couple. Councillor Quinn.
Thank you. I think, we'll all be probably slightly concerned to see that vacancy levels in the square are increasing. I think this is about 19% June 25. But vacancy levels by estimated rental value are even worse. So it seems to have doubled since December 2024. Is there some explanation for that? Is that because the vacancies are for larger shops in the square? Would that be the correct interpretation? Thank you.
There we go. Hi, Martin.
Yeah, we've had a few failures. So we had River Island vacate. They were on they came to the end of their lease. We had Body Shop who went into administration. So we've had 2 or 3 like that during the course of the year. So that has that's really been the big ones that have affected those numbers.
Follow up, Councillor Quinn.
Thank you. And just going back to the estimated rental value, that's increased. The vacancy level of that has increased greater than the overall vacancy level for the square. Is that just because those are bigger shops that are now empty? Thanks.
look at the numbers have gone from March to June by estimated rental value from 6% to 9%. So that's broadly increased by, if you like, 50% of the 66%, and I suppose for the area 12% would go to 18. So I guess slightly it's a disproportionate by area, but you know, there's not a huge discrepancy that points to significantly bigger shops failing.
Yeah, sorry.
The figures point to marginally bigger shops have failed than typically. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry, I feel like I've not explained what I said very well. So I was looking at December 24 to June 25. So the increase of the vacancy levels is only 6%, but the estimated rental value that's vacant has doubled over that time. I don't know if you can see that in the figures. Maybe explain that.
From December, yeah.
Yeah. To be fair, I think it is self-explanatory. So that's
yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Thanks. I'm just going to ask Martin something just on that. What is there sort of a market standard of what an average vacancy level would be in a shopping centre like the Square? You know, are we sort of an outlier when compared to other shopping centres, or are we about average? Do you know?
I would say across the, I can look some data up while you're having this meeting if you want, and I can answer that later. But I would say we're doing slightly better than the UK as a whole, and probably in line with the region. But if you want, I'll look up some data while you're having the meeting, and I'll answer that question later.
Thanks, Martin. Sorry, I suspect that was a slightly unfair question to spring on you with no warning, but it just came to me. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's on that subject, actually, if you're going to be looking up the data, rather than just looking at the vacancy rates, because I know we have some tenants that have, you know, 0 rent periods, and some tenants don't pay the full service charge and other incentives and things to reduce the vacancy rate. Is it possible to see that data, you know, alongside the vacancy rates? You know, how is the income or the rent comparing to the standard that we would expect? Are people having to be incentivised, and to what extent? Is there a way of showing that data alongside vacancy rates?
Well, not easily. We have, I mean, in the Square and shopping centres like this, there are a number of occupiers who are occupying on a short-term basis. In the stronger areas where we're trying to find longer-term tenants who invest in their stores and pay bigger rents, and then in some of the weaker parts of the centre, so Obelisk Way, where Boots is, for instance, is a quieter mall than others. In those sort of malls, it's quite typical to have tenants on short-term leases paying low rents, which includes service charges where there is a shortfall in service charge. So there is quite a lot of those sort of tenancies, but I'm not sure that there's a simple data point that can explain that, other than obviously as a management team, as a property team, we get monthly reports from the agents, from the asset managers, and scrutinise all that data about how the net income is tracking month by month, and monitoring all the tenant failures and monitoring all the reletting aspects and driving those through. But as I say, it's not sure there's a simple metric that would give that in, if you like, in 1 or 2 data points.
Yeah, sure. It does sound a bit complicated. Maybe a sort of qualitative summary of it from the management team would be better.
Sure. Yeah, I think when what we do to the property working group is we report in the valuations each year, and that gives a measure of the total estimated rental value, and then you can compare that with how much net income we're actually receiving, and that's another interesting data point to track.
Thanks. No one else has their hand up, so I'm afraid, ask you another question, Martin. I think I recall it being raised a while ago, but I just wanted to ask about the theatre building. Obviously, there's presumably a floor or however many floors it is of that vacant and has been vacant for quite some time. Is anything being done with that space? Is it just a case that we can't find the right tenant, or why is that sort of consistently sort of sticking?
Yeah, we got 8,000 square feet vacant in theatre, which is about half of one of the 3 floors in there. We let 4,000 square feet to National Oil Well Varco just before in summer last year. I mean, the truth is there aren't that many requirements of that sort of size for that part of the world. You've got more requirements perhaps for Farnborough or Guildford, and fewer in the Blackwater Valley. What you sometimes do get is smaller requirements for kind of 1,500, 2,000 square feet, but that would involve quite a lump of landlord's expenditure to divide up the suite, and then you're still left with the difficulty if you do need to accommodate a larger requirement. So here's a question: we are working the market really hard, but there aren't many requirements for 4,000 to 8,000 square feet, which is really what we're looking for.
Thanks. That's fair enough. Councillor Wilson.
If it's okay, I'll change the subject back to the capital programme. So page 40, section 6.11, and also page 46, section 13.4 refers to 1.4 million of capital receipts to reduce the increase in the capital financing requirement. So what would happen if these capital receipts were not received? So I guess the CFR would be higher. There wouldn't be the funding potentially for the transformation programme. Is that right? What's the implication of that if they're not received?
Yes, so we've decided to allocate 1.4 million against the capital programme. If we get more capital receipts in, then we potentially have more money for transformation. But yeah, ultimately, what you've said is absolutely right. The underlying need to borrow, so the CFR would increase more than what we've got projected in there. But as we know, what we're currently showing as coming in, we can get more contributions, less, it all comes about, and actually, indeed we could spend less. So, yeah, it's ultimately, we'd end up potentially with less for the transformation, as you said, and higher capital financing requirement.
Could I just ask something on that? Is that, do the capital receipts, is that the amount we actually expect to sort of hit the bank account this financial year, or is it the commitment to sell is sufficient? Do you see what I mean? Does the transaction need to complete for it to count within this financial year?
Yes, we do need to actually have the sale in. We can't accrue for that. So yeah, that's physical cash entering.
Okay. I see Councillor Betton. Did you just? No. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks. There's a really brief question. It's page 40, section 6.15, and it's just to sort of, and section 6.13. It's just to sort of just make sure we understand what that number 61% is. So that is 61% of the council's income is spent on financing costs. So that's in debt interest, MRP, minus any investment income. Is that correct? And that leaves 39% of the council's income to be spent on everything else.
Yeah, so it is debt interest and MRP, so it's the full kind of debt cost, but yeah, that's correct.
And then the investment income's taken off that to get to the 61%, is that right?
I'm just trying to think of the calculation. I think that is just financing costs. I don't think investment income's And actually, I do say that it does that. Yes, it has, sorry. Yes, it includes the investment incomes come off, 'cause it's the net, yes. Yeah, sorry.
Okay, Councillor Wilson.
Another small point, if that's okay, sorry for your indulgence. Page 45, section 8.3, talks about training for councillors. I know we talked about that just now on a different subject. Yeah, I mean, speaking for myself, I know I could do with some training in this function of this committee.
Yeah, absolutely. That's on my to-do list. I've got various kind of, material things to pull together to provide training, and if anyone has anything specific that they would like to cover, I'd be more than happy to include that. I think I was intending on the training being general finance and then sort of little pockets, but welcome your ideas, whether you'd like, one session or you'd like little kind of half-hour bites, or how it would best work for you, because then we can kind of carve it up. So yeah, welcome to hear your thoughts on those.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we can all always benefit from training. Any more on this agenda item? No, looks like we are happy. We will move on to agenda item 7, external audit recommendations. Vicky, I think that's you again.
I'm not going to give a particular introduction to this, just to say that the report provides councillors with an update to the external audit recommendations from the 2023-24 audit. And Annex B contains our sort of progress update for you. Annex A is the actual report again for your information. It's easier to have it all together. So I'll take them as read and open up to questions on anything specific.
Any questions from the committee on this agenda item? Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I just wanted to, circle back to what assurance we get from the Grant Thornton audit, disclaimed audits, and sort of reading what it says on page 56 of our report, but early on theirs, it's just a sort of reminder of we're on a journey to assurance and we're not there at all. In fact, it says the council's had not had external audit of its financial statements since 2018-19, but it didn't even have unaudited financial statements until recently. So we had this huge gap we've tried to fill, and there's something that really leapt out in the next paragraph about halfway through. Our work cannot be relied upon to disclose all defalcations or other irregularities. Defalcation is theft, misappropriation or misuse of assets or funds by someone who has a fiduciary responsibility for them. So it's great that they've done this, but it doesn't tell us that there's been no theft, misappropriation or anything. So really, it doesn't really give us any assurance at all, does it?
I suspect this was quite a common sentence that they put when obviously they'd had a number of councils that they hadn't had any audits. So I think what they're referring to is they can look at the in-year balances, but they can't give assurance, which hence the disclaimed opinion, because they couldn't guarantee the opening balances. So I think that's what that relates to. And obviously, as we know, the 23-24 audit, they didn't complete the in-year audit either. So that's why we're on the path to assurance. They will be coming to the next committee meeting with an update on their audit and with their value for money statement and recommendations as well. So yeah, they'll be welcome to give them any questions at that point.
I will jump in with a question now. On sort of the Annex B, which shows the steps that we're taking to not comply, but sort of in reaction to the recommendations made by Grant Thornton, there's reference to a full valuation of all land and building and investment properties for the 24-25 financial year. Couple of questions on that. I mean, where does that go? Is that reviewed by councillors at some body? Is it property working group? Where does that end up? And secondly, I guess the obvious question is, were there any nasty surprises in that revaluation where we found something where things were not as expected?
I'm just Brigg might want to come in a bit. So essentially, the full asset listing goes to the external auditors. So obviously, they're done when we commission them. They're a red book valuation. We put them all through the accounts. Then the auditors obviously review the asset register. They also use their in-house or appointed advisors, and they have a look. So property is generally is a big area as part of the audit. So they do question the validity of some of the valuations. They do question what challenge property team as officers have, queried on the valuers. So the auditors do place really high reliance and go into it in a lot of detail. Any nasty surprises? It wouldn't be Surrey Heath if we didn't have any surprises, would it? So we did find some anomalies. Can't remember me saying that. Which is a really good that we did this exercise going into LGR. So we did find that there were some items that hadn't been valued in the past. It should have been. So what we have done as part of this exercise is tie up the finance asset register list, which is what they've been using, and also the property one. So it's been really useful exercise to make sure all our kind of ducks in a row, which has been really good. And obviously one of the purposes of having 100% valuation was so hopefully we could get assurance on that part of the balance sheet. So obviously they're still working through the audit. So hopefully that's made good progress. But I don't know if Martin wants to come in at all.
Martin, do you have anything to add? Or?
Yeah, I need to agree that not only do we provide the valuers with full information, then the auditors, as Vicky said, do come along and, if you like, do very thorough checks on top of that. The investment portfolio was valued every year in any case. This was really about updating and getting a more accurate position on the corporate property, if you like, the property that we occupy, and the leisure portfolio and so on. I've also got that data point on current shopping centre vacancy, according to Savills, is running at 17%, which is pretty much that's by area. And that compares with our 19% as at June.
Okay, thank you. That's a very useful benchmark for us to have in mind. Councillor Quinn, did I see your hand up go up there?
Yeah, thank you, Martin, for getting those statistics so quickly. So just looking through the report, it's clear that it says some more work needs to be done to ensure correct accounting of income and balance sheet regarding investment property income. Can I have a clarification on when exactly that work will likely be done, and whether that will show any anomalies or irregularities, hopefully not, in Council's existing position? Thank you.
Yeah, we're obviously continuing to review that. So we've done a few where we've noticed some different some incorrect accounting. So we are working with the auditors on them assessing our judgment. So we're not quite there yet. We haven't had the response from there. So they have to go through all their technical teams and stuff. So the draft accounts for 24-25 may well change if they agree with us, and then we can include those. So it's kind of a progressing stance really, where we're trying to increase some of the reporting and some of the transparency sort of for future. It's an ongoing process, but we're getting there.
Thanks.
Councillor Rakes.
Thank you. Yeah, we discussed this in the pre-briefing, but the page 120 minimum revenue provision. This is a difference which we discussed, but I think it'd be useful for the committee to hear it as well. the difference between the auditor's point of view on how the MRP should be calculated, which seems to me a sort of straight line type of, straight repayment type of process versus the annuity scheme that we've got. And I also wondered whether how that different view, how will that be reconciled? What's the mechanism for that?
Yeah, so the auditors have looked at it on the basis that actually if we did it over 2% straight line, that used to be the standard many years ago on MRP. And that, it's just kind of like a base standard. And actually, when we do projections, so on some of the business cases, assessments for selling assets, buying assets, all those kind of things, we would just use a 2% as a guide. The reason we've used the annuity method on a lot of the items that we've got in our capital financing requirement is because they were on sort of regen, or at the time, regen schemes. So things like some of the properties, some of the, the industrial estates, things like that, where you would expect the rental to kind of go up as, units are filled and as time goes on. So the annuity method basically is matching your income and the expenditure profile of repaying that debt. The other thing to note is that a fair chunk of our debt is on repayment. So it's not all maturity bullet loans where we repay it at the end. So we are using our MRP that we're, I suppose, collecting via council tax to repay some of our debts. We've got some equal instalment of principal and we have annuity loans as well. So we are kind of matching the repayment that we are physically making on debt as well to the MRP. But we've produced a paper to the auditors against the valuation reports. So one of the key issues they had was some of the lives of the assets that are in the capital financing requirements. So our paper's sort of showing the valuers are suggesting the remaining life of X asset is this. The remaining life in the minimum revenue provision schedule is this, and actually they're comparable. So I think their focus is more on the actual physical total amount, which is linked to the annuity method. So I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Thanks. Just on that subject, could I just ask, one of the recommendations is for there to be a detailed minimum revenue provision statement developed and shared with the audit committee. Is that something that is planned, or is that something that is available?
It's not yet available. Once we've got agreement from the auditors, we've shared our paper with them and they've kind of signed it off, if you like, we can then share that with this committee.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks. It is on that subject. Yeah, it sounds quite reasonable to push back against the sort of flat 2% a year line. Is it analogous to if you have a 50-year mortgage, you don't pay 2% of the equity off every year, you pay more interest and less equity at the start and then more equity as you go on? That seems to make sense. So it'll be interesting to see what the auditor says about it. The very final bullet point on that, which runs on to the next page, it says, consider reviewing and assessing the impact of the new MRP guidance that will come into effect on the 1st of April 2026. What's that in reference to?
I think that was just their overall point on our MRP assessment, and as part of this review in the paper that we've done for 24-25, they'll review the new guidance to make sure that we're still complying with it.
Any more questions on this agenda item? No, doesn't look like it. Okay, in that case, we will move on to agenda item 8, internal audit recommendations update. Natalie.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is the regular report that comes to this committee, setting out, providing an update for you on internal audit recommendations. So what you'll see at page 127 to 133 are a list of all of the audit recommendations, including those that have been complied with and those that are still overdue. And then from page 135 to 138 sets out the ones where the recommendations are overdue, and then towards the end of the report sets out some of the explanations for the delay. This report, the overdue list from page 135, was prepared at the end of August. So since then, some of these recommendations have actually been complied with. So I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Any questions from the committee on this? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, and thank you for the report again. I was just wondering about the implications of LGR on things like revenues and debtors and things like that. Is there a sort of incentive for people who owe the council money through whatever of these, quite a lot of them are that, to sort of play for time and hope that the council's abolished and everything gets lost in the chaos?
Well, luckily, I've taken on a new principal litigation solicitor in the team, and one of the top priorities that I've given to her is to deal with and progress the council's debt recovery. So she's working with finance in updating our debt policy and procedure, and she's working her way around all the service areas to understand how they deal with debt and help them improve the processes. She's also looked through the overdue debt list that we've got, and she's working her way through the ones on that list where she can actually take cases to court and serve letters asking for that money to come in. If it doesn't, then progressing it on to court proceedings. So it's very much something that we are dealing with, at pace and with urgency.
And there's enough time before this sort of, what would it be, April 2027?
Definitely the plan. I mean, debt recovery process is actually quite straightforward. So I would imagine that we could bring in quite a lot of money between now and before LGR comes into force. But once we go into LGR, if the money's due to this council, then that would just roll forward to the successor authority. And there's no reason for the debt that can be pursued and recovered not to continue after LGR. Is that okay?
Yep, Vicky.
And just to say that on day one, we will still be operating our same systems. We're not going to move over straight away, so that data won't be lost. And then when we do merge systems, obviously there'll be a big data integration exercise that will be thoroughly audited. So if people are hoping that will happen, it's very unlikely that their debts will get lost.
Councillor Betton.
Thank you. Perennial question that I always ask. Alex is gone. Do we have enough resources?
So we still have one internal auditor who is diligently still working through the audit plan, and he liaises with me on a regular basis as to progress with those reports, and completed reports go to CMD to be reviewed. I think I've mentioned before at this committee that the plan is to move towards outsourcing the service to the Southern Internal Audit Partnership, and the plan is that they will come along to the next audit committee to do a presentation to explain what service they'll provide. And by doing that, we want to build in more resource, because obviously I don't think we can long-term provide an adequate audit service with just one officer. So that's the reason for the move.
No, I would agree with that. The reason I asked the question is some little while ago, we introduced the system whereby if issues weren't completed on time, then the department or the person responsible would be invited to come here and explain why. And all of a sudden, everything got done. And now I see quite a few overdues. And I guess that's related to Alex not being here.
Yes, I think there is an element of that, but that's something I'm very aware of because audit comes under my responsibility. So I've been working with the remaining internal auditor where we've been approaching service areas and trying to progress these and move them along. And the idea was that we did have officers were invited, to come along this evening. So they're either in the room or on the screen if there are any particular outstanding recommendations that you wanted to ask questions about.
Not at this meeting, but maybe next time if they're still overdue.
Thank you.
Councillor Quinn.
Yeah, thank you. So just a very specific question. Page 129, it talks about data protection mandatory training for all staff. So sadly, there's a number of staff who they've been chased. They've received 4 reminders, and some of them have still not responded and still not undertaken the training. I'm just wondering whether anyone's done a welfare check on these members of staff, or what the procedure is for chasing them up to make sure they get the necessary training, because it is quite important. And yeah, ignoring 4 reminder emails sounds quite bad. Thank you.
So the process is that obviously our information governance manager and data protection officer will or a member of your team will chase the individual concerned, and then if it's still not complied with, then it's referred to CMT or the relevant head of service to chase up with the individual. I think the position has improved since this was last updated, so I think we're now more or less up to date.
Yeah,
So,
we are literally
Sally, did I see your hand go up on the screen there? Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, apologies. Yes, I was just going to echo what Mrs. Boateng has just said, that we do, with mandatory training, our learning and development officer is really good at working with the information management officer to identify those who haven't completed the training, and then it's initially raised to the line manager and then to the head of service. We recently did an exercise, very recently in the last few weeks, to clear up the stragglers, and it's not a welfare issue. It was just an oversight, and I believe, as I think Ms. Turnbull has just mentioned, that we are pretty much up to date now.
Thanks. I will ask the obligatory audit standards and risk question. What's the latest on the position with the arrears at the bid?
Okay, so the latest position is that we have a meeting booked with them on the 20th of October, and that is with myself, Nick Stevens, the leader, and Kelvin and Cook as a portfolio holder, and we will hopefully come to an agreement. The level of money owing has essentially been agreed by the bid, but there's further discussions with obviously the other bid members on the 30th and the technicalities around it. So it's ongoing, but we are making slow progress.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee on the internal audit report? No, all looks good. We're making record time for one of these meetings, I think. So I think that just takes us on to agenda item 9, which is the work programme. Eddie, do you want to say anything on this?
Thanks, Chair. There's quite a few various bits and pieces in respect to this. So the first one, you'll notice that the March meeting's down as, I think, subject to change in the work programme. So I think we mentioned at the Chair's briefing that it's likely that something will have to be put in for either January or February, simply to be before the backstop date for the 24-25 accounts, and for Grant Thornton to present their audit findings. As the head of Legal and Democratic Services has said, there is the presentation from, I think the Chair used the term, the external internal auditor for November, as well as Grant Thornton presenting value for money findings and giving some general reporting. With that, I think it was suggested about moving the monitoring officer's annual report and the financial reporting potentially to that January-February meeting, just to simply free up some room and capacity for the committee. But any thoughts are welcome.
Thanks. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, sorry, just to check, you said move the monitoring officer's annual report, and did you say that the finance Q2? Okay, I'd be okay with moving the monitoring officer's annual report if they think that's appropriate. But it is quite good to get the Treasury report quite expeditiously after the quarter, if that's possible. Is there anything else that could move?
Just to say that the reason I suggested potentially the Treasury report, because the figures that you've got now is up to the end of August, not the quarter. So you've almost got a full year, half year, sorry. So that's the only reason I kind of suggested that could potentially put back.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll definitely take that on board then, yeah.
Okay, so effectively what we'll be doing is sort of splitting this November meeting and then adding in the stuff we need to do for the backstop into this new January meeting. Is that right? Is everyone on the committee happy with that, Councillor Benn? Well, ask whatever you want.
Thank you. Grant Thornton, the BDO fees, have they been settled yet?
They haven't been settled. I have had conversations with the PSAA, and they have sent me what they've kind of essentially agreed with them, and I have had conversations, but I haven't received an invoice from them, but I do have the fees, so I'm happy to talk to you offline about those if you wish.
Yeah, that's separate to the email that I got earlier this afternoon. Yes, which I forwarded to you, which I think should be yours. Yeah. So the original, I think, group fee, whatever you want to call it, was £30,000 or something. And the latest one is considerably bigger than that. And what are we looking at in terms of BDO for their non-delivery?
Yeah, so the latest, so we kind of go in stages. I'll pop PDO for the second. So the 23, 24 and the 24, get my years right. 23, 24, 24, 25. They were kind of in parallel, the amount of money, and that was as part of the re-tendering for PSAA, so the amounts did rise a lot. In terms of the BDO, what they originally submitted to PSAA wasn't necessarily agreed. So what, just from memory, because I haven't looked at it for a little while, I think the scale fee, which was around the 30, 35, was approved. BDO originally put in quite a large amount for one of those years. That wasn't accepted. So I think, from memory, what we'd put in each year in the accounts and accrued was broadly in line with what PSAA have agreed. But I can't remember the totals off the top of my head and which year was which, but certainly PSA didn't quite agree with everything that BDO put forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else from the committee on the work programme? No, everyone's happy? Okay, in that case, I think we're done. Thank you everyone for your contributions.
Thank you, Chair.